The intergalactic arena orbited Caratha's seventh moon like a glittering parasite, its lattice hull pulsing with bioluminescent advertisements and urgent corporate jingles in over 2,000 languages. From a distance, it resembled a carnival crushed into a battleship and dipped in chrome, an architectural fever dream built to entertain, intimidate, and above all, profit. Inside, it was worse. Screeching flares spiraled through the air as the stadium's biomechanical ceiling adjusted its atmosphere to dramatic, dry thunderstorm per quadrant settings. Acidic mist rained lightly across Sector 3 to please the Flarn, who found humidity emotionally validating, while Sector 5 demanded dry static to mimic battlefields of historic slaughter. 12 million eyes, some compound, some clustered on stalks, some borrowed from lesser species for the event, focused on the central Colosseum, a shifting, reality-bending patchwork of microclimates and reprogrammable terrain. The championship was moments from beginning. A gelatinous vendor shuffled through the aisles offering screaming snacks. Literally. The snacks screamed. Someone's antennae sizzled from a misfired ignition ribbon. The audience roared with glee. Across the cosmos, feeds opened. From backwater mining colonies to cushioned spires of the Anrel diplomatic corps, every screen blinked into view of the arena, carrying the bloodlust and showmanship of the Galaxy Tactical Combat Championships. This year's match was special. Historic, even. Not for who was fighting, but for who wasn't. The reigning champions, the Grenth Hammers, had been disqualified after ingesting their own translator. It had called the ambassadors made a flesh croissant during the handshake. Thus, chaos had flung open a wild card slot. And someone, probably a drunk algorithm with a soft spot for bureaucratic loopholes, had filled that gap with humans. The galactic consensus on humans was well documented. Amusing, enthusiastic, surprisingly adaptable, and absolutely no threat. The kind of species you invited to a skirmish just to see if they'd invent a new curse word or accidentally defeat themselves with their own shoelaces. And now, creatures of all carbon compositions, shrieked the announcer through a vibrating neurochannel that scraped across the auditory cortex like someone dragging a violin through gravel, prepare yourselves for the spectacle of violence sanctioned by 27 peace treaties. The crowd screamed. From the volcanic vaults of the Junrak Empire, the warlords of genocide, the masters of mecha flesh, give your appendages, slime trails, and flapping extremities to the Junrak Legion. Tectonic drums pounded as the Junrak emerged. They were 12 feet tall and armored in fused biometal, rippling with reactive spines and thermal exhaust. Each one bore tribal scars seared into their hides by ritual flame. They marched in perfect formation, accompanied by an anthem that sounded like an angry forge vomiting into a cathedral. Spectators fainted in awe. One Devuran priest entered spontaneous reproductive mitosis. And from the minor species bracket, the announcer's tone dropped to something between pity and amusement. A squad from the backwater of Sol 3, designated Terrans. Current cultural exports, erratic podcasts, chocolate, and minor rebellions. Please simulate enthusiasm for the human contingent. Silence. Then a few polite clicks. The humans walked in with no music, no pyrotechnics, no heraldry. 4 figures clad in matte gray armor that swallowed light, helmets down, rifles slung low like casual afterthoughts. No symbols. No names. No expressions. One of them was shorter than the others by a handspan. That was Mira. In the booth above, Ambassador Klest of the Larval Council adjusted his slime hammock and muttered, "I thought they'd be taller." "They're not here for the height," replied a bored Zoran commentator whose head resembled a melting starfish in a monocle. "They're here to die interestingly." The betting pools agreed. Odds against the humans sat at 10,455 to 1. A record. Children were being taught subtraction with it. But Mira Halden wasn't looking at the odds. She wasn't looking at the crowd, the gladiators, or the panoramic walls now shifting to depict a simulated forest composed of calcified bone trees and red mist. She was watching the light. The angle. The reflection on her rifle's scope. The way heat shimmered on the artificial horizon. She blinked once. A calculation ran itself in the back of her neural implant. Not one she initiated, just one that came with being alive this long, this quiet, and this used to being underestimated. Her teammates didn't speak. No names exchanged. No affirmations. Their entire prep phase had been silence. They had eaten quietly, cleaned their rifles quietly, and slept quietly. The only sound had been Myra's breath, soft against the padded neck of her armor as she reviewed maps of the arena layout, watching how the terrain would change every 6 minutes. In the human command booth, located inconveniently close to a waste chute, Colonel Armitage was sweating. The kind of sweating that bordered on legally distinct drowning. "They've got reactive hide plating," he hissed to the assistant AI. "That's immune to conventional fire. And we sent snipers." "Snipers? Your concern is noted and color-coded for future dismissal," the AI chirped. Down in the arena, the Junrak began their war chant. Each stomp cracked the arena floor. Acid hissed from their mouths, sizzling through their own armor in a show of dominance. One of them flexed so hard his shoulder cannon fired a celebratory round into the sky. It burst in the shape of their imperial symbol, a burning skull devouring a planet. The crowd lost its collective mind. The humans didn't flinch. Back in the crowd, a Trinaxi diplomat said, "I give them 20 seconds. 17, said her mate. Ambassador Klest raised a gelatinous brow ridge. "I bet 10 credits they don't fire a single shot before getting pulped." And down below, Mira slowly exhaled. The red mist thickened. Arena heat began to spike, simulated to mimic a collapsing star's outer orbit. Visuals would distort. Gravity would fluctuate. The floor cracked in places, revealing magma channels below. All part of the theatrical challenge. "Begin the blood song," the announcer shrieked. "Engage." The Junrak charged. It was like watching tectonic plates decide to go sprinting. Massive, terrifying, merciless. Their armor flared with heat. Their claws extended like heat-forged blades. They roared as one, a sound calibrated to trigger panic responses in 50 known species. The humans didn't move. Then one did. Not forward. Sideways. A slide. Then gone. Into the mist. Like stepping behind a veil. The crowd blinked. Another human raised her rifle, not to shoot, but to turn the scope. She adjusted the angle, then dropped it to her side. Mira stood completely still. Her teammates vanished one by one. Their armor blurred at the edges, not with technology, but with placement, timing, and shadow. The Junrak didn't notice. They kept charging, until one of them stopped. Then another. And then nothing. The screen feed flickered. Cameras strained to adjust. But all they captured was swirling mist and the last echoes of footfalls. Somewhere in the booth, a tech assistant said, "We've lost eyes on the humans." "They're right there," said another. "No, they're not." A beat passed. Then two. Then a scream, not from the arena, but from the viewing deck. A bureaucrat had realized their entire side bet fund had been wagered on the wrong outcome. And Mira Halden, sniper, human, statistically irrelevant underdog, simply tilted her rifle barrel an inch. A single drop of condensation slid down its frame. It sparkled like a jewel. She whispered, not aloud, but in thought, "Wind pattern stable. Enemy blind. Fire lanes clean." The mist closed behind her like a curtain. The feed cut to black. And all across the galaxy, for the first time in the history of the championships, the crowd went quiet. Somewhere deep beneath the arena, 3 levels below the luxury suites and 9 above the atmospheric incinerator vents, was a locker room that hadn't been updated since the Cornith Plague. It smelled faintly of wet thermoplastic and administrative regret. The lights buzzed. The walls pulsed with slow alerts. 12 minutes to engagement. Final prep now. No one in the room looked at the wall. Lieutenant Mira Halden sat on a narrow bench, a black cloth stretched over her lap. She wasn't polishing her rifle. That had been done an hour ago. She wasn't adjusting her armor. That had been done twice, by hand. Now she sat quietly, folding the cloth into an origami square with exact creases. Not for luck. For focus. Across from her, Ramirez crouched with one foot on the locker edge, knife in hand, trimming a callus from her palm. She hummed something that might have been a hymn or a childhood lullaby, but off-key, like her body remembered a song her mind had long deleted. Day leaned against the wall, motionless, eyes closed. Not meditating. Just listening, an old sniper's trick. Feel the vibration of a building and know its heart. She wore a throat sensor that pulsed green with her breath. Steady. Too steady. She hadn't spoken since they'd landed. Reese, the youngest, paced. Silent steps, forward and back, mapping the distance between floor tiles like each one held a memory. Her helmet hung from her fingertips. She glanced at Mira once, as if to ask something, then didn't. 4 humans. All women. All trained not to be seen, not to be heard, not to be known. Somewhere above, an announcer roared with enthusiasm about acid vomit. The walls shuddered slightly from crowd noise. A distant, artificial thunder rolled. Still, no one spoke. They didn't need to. Mira had served with them for 18 campaigns. Not a long time by galactic war standards, but long enough to build a language of glances, silences, and half-breaths. Long enough to know that Ramirez would aim high, Day would go low, and Reese, bright, feral Reese, would go straight for the heart of the chaos. She unfolded the cloth again and recreased it. Someone else might have found it unsettling. The way they prepared. No camaraderie. No battle cries. Just the efficient, mechanical rituals of killers who had stopped assigning names to their bullets. A door hissed open. A protocol drone hovered in, blinking blue. Greetings, Terran participants. I am CRV-9, Combat Regulation Validator. Please confirm your readiness for... Out, Mira said without lifting her eyes. I must complete regulation checklist. Reese turned, stepped toward it. The drone paused mid-hover. A quiet whine escaped its optic node. I will return. It did not return. Day cracked one eye open. Mira folded the cloth again. They were ready. Not that anyone believed it. 10 hours earlier, in the control tower of the arena, Ambassador Klest had nearly split his gelatinous form in delight upon learning which squad the Terrans had deployed. Women? Snipers? You cannot be serious, he'd gurgled, oscillating with glee. They've sent camper mice. I believe the term is ghost team, offered his aide, nervously checking the line of diplomatic observers filing into the protocol box. Apparently they're effective. They are humans. Klest clapped his pseudopods together, sending a ripple through his hover chair. A species that weaponizes sarcasm and caffeine. Effective at annoying, maybe. Not war. The betting odds shifted again, tightening slightly. 1 or 2 war historians, those few who remembered the siege of Casper Line, and how it ended in a sniper shot between twin moons, quietly placed small, cautious bets on the humans. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to hedge. Still, most laughed. Camper mice. Back in the locker room, Mira glanced at her chrono. 6 minutes. She finally spoke, her voice low and flat, like a stone dropped in a deep well. We split at sector change. Phase 1 goes red to bone. Phase 2 full dissociation. No comms unless absolutely necessary. 3 nods. Ramirez. Watch the thermal bloom. They'll pulse the field halfway through. Copy, Ramirez said, sheathing the knife. Day, your camo's reading hot on the upper left. Fix it. Day opened her eyes, glanced down, adjusted a dial. The sensor flickered once, then returned to green. Reese. The girl snapped to attention. Still young enough to respond to name before instinct. Mira noted it. Would file it away for after. You're on the bait run. Reese didn't blink. Got it. If you get clipped. I won't. Mira paused. Don't improvise, she said finally. Only a little. Mira stared. I said don't. Reese nodded. Less cocky now. The silence returned, thick and unbending. Somewhere, the drums started. The pre-match sequence was underway. Mira stood, lifting her rifle, an unmarked modular design that looked more like a broken tool than a weapon. She tested the grip. The weight. No need. Just habit. Then she turned to the door. Time. It opened before she reached it. They walked together, one behind the other. Not quite a march. Not quite a glide. Something in between. Something deliberate. They entered the launch corridor without ceremony. Alien teams strutted down theirs with howling flags, chanted prayers, and ceremonial flame tattoos. The humans passed an automated mop unit. Above them, the arena roared. And as they emerged into the light, for the first time truly visible to the galaxy, the camera zoomed in. 4 women in gray. No insignia. No signal. Just movement. The alien broadcasters scrambled. Here come the humans, said one, switching channels with a tentacle. No idea which one's the leader. They're not even glowing. They're not even armed. I don't see. Wait, are those weapons? They look like tent poles. I believe that's the sniper team. Where's their armor crest? They don't have one. The crowd rippled with confusion. A few scattered laughs. A thin applause that died like static. And Mira, already kneeling at the edge of a bone ash dune, raised her rifle, casually, like someone lifting a coffee mug, and sighted across the arena. The Junrak were still chanting. The terrain shifted. Red sand began to swirl in pockets. Columns rose from the ground, archways, broken walls, and fragments of forgotten ruins. Artificial wind kicked up plumes of dust. The temperature rose by 20 degrees in 4 seconds. Standard arena protocol. Simulate threat. Simulate chaos. Simulate glory. Mira whispered to herself, voice barely audible. East wall fracture at 9 meters. Turbulent updraft. We'll lose visibility after second phase terrain shift. She tapped her visor. Infrared flickered to life. The shapes began to glow. One by one, the team vanished. Ramirez dropped into a crater, disappearing into shadow. Day melted into the archway, her outline merging with stone and light. Reese darted forward, vanishing behind a column just as the mist thickened. Mira was last. She clicked her rifle once. Just once. Somewhere, a camera caught the sound. And above the arena, in the control tower, a junior analyst frowned. Something's wrong. What? I just lost visual on the humans. Klest laughed. They're hiding. Let them play coward. The Junrak will sniff them out like. He paused. Blinked his lateral eyes. Wait. Are their heat signatures gone? Silence. Yes. How? Unknown. In the arena, the first pulse fired from the Junrak line. Pure intimidation. A thunderous cannon strike meant to scatter and reveal. It vaporized the top of a dune. Nothing beneath. Another pulse. Still nothing. The Legion advanced. Their massive frames stomped forward, each step a declaration of superiority. Their armor hissed. Their shoulders rippled. They loomed like statues made of war itself. And still, no return fire. No motion. No sound. Just mist. Until one Junrak at the flank twitched. Then fell. No flash. No impact. Just down. The others froze. Then another. A ripple of silence. Then chaos. The camera feeds scrambled to locate shooters. Angles twisted. Spectators leaned forward. Announcers stuttered. But no one saw them. No muzzle flash. No trace. Just one after another. Drop, drop, drop. And Mira, now 50 meters away, eyes calm behind her scope, whispered a number. 17. Her finger brushed the trigger again. The crowd never heard the shot. The Junrak never saw her. The arena never registered her presence. But across the galaxy, somewhere between a paused bet and a stunned silence, a realization began to bloom. They were not women in armor. They were ghosts. And the army had already lost. The arena reconfigured itself like a beast shedding skin, rearranging terrain tiles with seismic groans as the simulation system loaded Phase 2, urban collapse. Buildings rose in segments. Skeletal towers, broken aqueducts, shattered statues of forgotten empires, each one twitching as if unsure it wanted to be here at all. Heat radiated off the battlefield in oily waves. Red mist thinned to a gray shimmer, revealing only shapes, uncertain ones, bleeding into each other with every gust of synthetic wind. Somewhere above, in Box 9C of the VIP tier, a Groll ambassador whispered, "I don't like this." His assistant, a pile of scented fur with eyes like gemstone sockets, nodded. "No one's died dramatically yet." "No," the ambassador muttered. "It's too quiet." Down below, the Zhenrak Legion was in motion, and it was not going well. These were not rookies. These were warriors bred for siege. Their armor remembered blood from 15 species. Their bones had been fused with hyperdense minerals to resist everything from beam fire to meteor strike. But what they were experiencing now wasn't resistance. It was erasure. 2 more dropped in under 7 seconds. One from the rear, just before issuing a unit-wide psy-call. Another while climbing a rubble incline, mid-snarl. No sounds, no warnings, just absence. Their formations, once precise as a marching storm, were now sloppier, tense. They began barking orders in their throat-click language, switching from line advance to point sweep. It did not help. At the edge of the bone wall near the eastern perimeter, Mira adjusted the temperature filter in her visor. A sheen of moisture coated her cheek. Not sweat, condensation. The arena was simulating urban humidity to mimic real-world thermal fog. An equalizer. Or at least it was supposed to be. Her breathing was even. Her heart rate stayed beneath 60 beats per minute. The rifle rested against her shoulder like it belonged there more than her bones did. She watched. Waited. Measured. "East 2. Top of the 3rd story," she said. The words didn't go over comms. They existed inside her skull, recitations of alignment. Her trigger finger barely moved. A flicker, armor glint. Click, thump. The Zhenrak fell backward, one eye socket caved in. No entry wound. The bullet had ricocheted off 2 slanted surfaces before finding home. Across the field, Reese darted behind a collapsed spire, twin barrels folded tight against her back. She skidded, rolled, and disappeared again beneath the shell of a collapsed transit bridge. 3 heartbeats later, 2 Zhenrak spun toward where she'd just been. Too late. The sound they'd heard was her decoy emitter, already rebounding noise from the other side of the battlefield. Ramirez was above them, crouched inside what had once been a glassy cathedral. She was invisible to the crowd and to the cameras, heat blurred against a background of pulsing circuitry. One hand on her trigger, the other tightening a ceramic wire across a breach point. She whispered to the wire like it was listening. When the Zhenrak reached the breach, snap, boom. Dust coated the air in thick, iron-scented waves. The arena commentators faltered. Update from Field Sector 2, one said, uncertain. It appears the Terrans have deployed, thermal suppression tactics. Possibly, ambient phase cloaking. No, interrupted the other commentator, a feathered mollusk who had hosted the championship for 30 years. This isn't tech. This is discipline. Discipline. A word not often spoken about humanity outside prison blocks or battlefield reviews. Up in the operations tower, several analysts hovered over their screens in disbelief. The heat maps were useless. Every algorithm set to track Terran motion had shorted. Some even tried to recalibrate their data to look for signs of wildlife instead, assuming a glitch. "They're not using implants," one of the engineers whispered. "They're not tapping the grid. How are they sinking fire?" "I don't know." The commander of the Zhenrak Legion bellowed a command that made 3 minor species flinch and expel reproductive spores in fear. His voice cracked over the arena feed. Phase push. Full sweep. 6 warriors fanned out. They activated flame paths, high arc gouts of thermal plasma designed to flush out camouflaged enemies. The buildings hissed. Walls melted. Rubble exploded into ash and glass. But the humans weren't in the buildings anymore. They were beneath them. Day had dropped into the arena's maintenance crawlspace during the last terrain shift, slipping through the artificial stone via a forgotten conduit. Now she moved silently through metal grates and exposed cables, her heartbeat timed with the echo pulse of the cooling fans. Above her, a Junrak passed, heavy, snarling, sure of his dominance. He paused, tilted his head. She didn't move. He took one more step. Her rifle pressed against the floor panel. Fired upward. The bullet punched through 2 inches of reinforced arena alloy, curved by magnetic guidance, and exited through his eye socket. The delay between sound and impact was under half a second. He was dead before his brain registered sound. Day remained motionless. Above her, the Junrak began to break. They didn't shout it, but it was there, in the shifting of feet, in the staggered breath of warriors bred to breathe only rage. The certainty was slipping. The enemy wasn't fighting back. They were rewriting the fight. Reese sprinted past another alley, dragging behind her a thermal emitter stolen from a fallen legionnaire. She hurled it into a trash crater, drawing 3 soldiers straight into Ramirez's trapline. Crack, snap, boom. Their helmets bounced like forgotten fruit. The crowd, once roaring, had gone whisper quiet. Somewhere a young alien child asked, "Why are they hiding?" The mother, an 8-limbed empath, didn't answer. She didn't know. And still, Mira didn't move. She lay prone at the lip of a high wall, the rifle's barrel tracking heartbeats. Not shapes, not voices, but intentions. Every time a Junrak thought about advancing, their pulse shifted half a beat forward. She tracked it, read it, pressed down gently. Thump. Another down. She adjusted 2 clicks left. Wind shift. Arena temperature dropped by 1 degree. Her eye twitched. Far away, at the betting kiosk, odds collapsed like flan under gravity. The Junrak had lost 14. 14. Without ever firing at a target. Ambassador Klest had stopped laughing. He leaned forward, mucus-slick fingers trembling. This is asymmetrical. His aide whispered, "This is artillery ballet. This is humiliation." The Junrak commander screamed orders. Phase 3 initiated. The arena buckled. Stone turned to glass. Fire poured down from synthetic clouds. Every surface shimmered with refracted heat. This was chaos incarnate. This was meant to overload sensors, break logic, and trigger instinctual panic. And then it happened. The humans reappeared. One by one, just for a second each, visible to all feeds. Reese vaulting across a beam, her silhouette against fire. Ramirez in mid-drop, barrel flaring. Day, rising from the earth like a ghost. And Mira, standing still, rifle slung casually, eyes fixed on the last 3 Junrak clustered at the center of the kill zone. For the first time in over an hour, she spoke aloud. Now. It wasn't a command. It was a release. In less than 1.4 seconds, all 3 remaining Junrak dropped, 3 synchronized shots from 3 different directions. Each bullet struck center mass, then blossomed. Non-lethal in another war. But here, in this arena, in this moment, it ended everything. Silence dropped like a weighted curtain. No breath. No cheer. Just static. Mira exhaled. Reese, somewhere unseen, whispered, "Was that the last?" Mira responded without voice. Just one word sent through pulse band. Yes. Above, a single commentator finally spoke. I think the humans have won." The crowd didn't erupt. They stared. And down in the arena, surrounded by the smell of melted stone and burned arrogance, Mira Holson Halden lowered her rifle, dusted a finger across her visor, and said only this: "Reset. The world might cheer later. The diplomats might panic. But for now, for just this breathless second in the aftermath of engineered chaos, the humans stood quietly in the ash they had made, and became, for the first time in galactic memory, the thing every empire fears. Unseen. Unmatched. Remembered. A minute after the final shot, the arena still hadn't found its voice. No music played. No banners dropped. The ceremonial death chimes, typically cued for a dramatic slow pan across the victorious, stuttered in confusion, then fell silent altogether. Even the arena AI, built to adapt to over 900 species preferences for post-combat pomp, failed to select a proper mood. It defaulted to ambient wind. Wind. Over the battlefield of smoldering glass and evaporated ego, the Terran team stood motionless. Reese still crouched in the hollow of a statue's cracked spine, watching nothing in particular, breath steady. Day emerged from the understructure like a wraith shedding dirt and silence. Ramirez holstered her weapon and stretched her arms like someone who'd just woken from a nap, not someone who'd helped dismantle a war machine. Mira stood alone atop a shattered obelisk, not for elevation or effect, just because it gave her the longest line of sight. Her visor darkened to filter the light from the flaming clouds still drifting above. A few Junrak corpses continued to twitch as their synaptic armor systems failed to recognize their masters were dead. Behind her, the gate to the Terran exit bay hissed open. She didn't turn. Didn't need to. They left the same way they came, quietly, precisely, without acknowledgement. It wasn't humility. It was doctrine. Up in the observation chamber, chaos bloomed like mold in a locked room. Ambassador Klest of the Larval Council had partially liquefied from stress and was demanding an official review. "I want footage scrubbed," he gurgled, slapping one pseudopod against a display. This was sabotage. No proper warrior dies like that. The arena's adjudicator, a sphere of whispering gases named Vel, pulsed yellow in frustration. Their kill metrics are verified across 6 redundant systems. Every round fired was within protocol. No banned tech. No external aid. They hid. They killed. This is an embarrassment. We can't have quiet victories. There are children watching. A junior ambassador from the Korra Enclave leaned in. "What do you suggest? That we require noise next time. I suggest we ban Terran snipers." There was a ripple. Part scoff, part gasp. Across the chamber, dozens of galactic dignitaries exchanged glances, antenna flicks, light pulses, and data squints. They didn't all like humans, but none of them wanted to admit how much this had rattled them. Ambassador Vex from the Inner Belt said it first. "We underestimated them." No one disagreed. Down in the neutral zone, Mira stripped out of her armor beneath flickering fluorescence and the buzz of a failing cooling vent. She folded her gear the same way she had in 17 different deployments. Precisely, corner to corner, like making peace with each item before storing it away. Reese sat nearby, cross-legged, chewing a protein bar like it might explode. "They're still arguing upstairs," she said around a mouthful. Ramirez chuckled. "Let 'em. They'll be busy for months just writing up what happened." "It's not just the death count," Day added. "It's the method. They don't know how to sell it. No drama. No heroic final clash. No messy close quarters. Just us. Gone. Then them. Gone." Reese grinned. "I mean, I'd buy that pay-per-view." Mira said nothing. She closed the latch on her weapons case and stood, rolling her neck once. Her muscles ached, not from strain, but from compression. The kind of ache that came from holding too much stillness in a space that didn't deserve it. A knock at the debrief door interrupted them. Colonel Armitage, red-eyed and clearly riding the edge of a bureaucratic migraine, peeked in. "They want to see you," he said. Mira raised an eyebrow. "All of you?" "Who's they?" Ramirez asked. Armitage hesitated. "Everyone." The press room was not ready. They'd tried, truly. Dozens of species had prepared question nodes, sent translators, and click echo repeaters. There was even a heat-sensitive mat to interpret footwork from 3-legged journalists. But nothing had prepared them for 4 human women walking into the room like it wasn't even there. No smiles. No salutes. No swagger. Just presence. The silence that followed their entrance was louder than most wars. Mira approached the central mic, though she didn't need to. The cameras were already feeding her face to 1,000,000 systems. A drone reporter from the Zrin Collective floated forward. "Lieutenant Halden, how would you describe your strategy during this match?" She stared at it. "We had a job," she said. Another voice, This one from a cluster of spores that communicated through pheromonal dispersal, puffed its question through a vent. Do Terrans consider this style of warfare ethical? No more or less than being devoured by a 14-foot acid trooper, Mira said. We just do it quieter. A screeching pile of scales in a diplomat's collar shrieked its question. A translator blinked it into words. Do you intend to compete again? Mira looked to her team. Reese shrugged. Ramirez smirked. Day closed her eyes and leaned back like the ceiling was a sky she'd rather be under. Only if the arena grows a spine, Mira said, turning. That was it. Press dismissed. Hours later, in the council's emergency session, the debate raged. This cannot be allowed to repeat, shouted the Kell speaker. They didn't just win, they undermined the ritual of battle. Where's the spectacle in 4 shadows and a few bullets? You mean the ones that ended an entire legion? A Larthian war historian asked dryly. They made war boring. That's not boring. That's efficient. They didn't even shout slogans. They didn't need to. A Junrak representative slammed both fists onto the dais. We demand a rematch. With whom? Said Ambassador Vex. Your legions in bags. The room nearly collapsed under the weight of its own diplomatic mass. Finally, the galactic moderator, a retired intelligence construct who now resided in a mechanical tank of nutrient gel and sarcasm, spoke. Proposal. We classify human sniper tactics as asymmetrically destabilizing and restrict them from future ceremonial engagements. Seconded, said Klest. Counter-proposal, murmured Vex. We admit quietly that we've been outplayed, and we remember not to challenge the quiet species next time. Silence followed, because even in that chamber, full of species that invented screaming as punctuation, they all remembered the silence of the arena. How it had settled not like an ending, but a beginning. Back on the transport ship, earthbound, Mira watched the stars blur into lines. The others slept. Or pretended to. A message pinged. She opened it. Encrypted. Old channel. A name she hadn't seen since her second deployment. Saw your match. One shot across an empire. They'll talk about it forever. Not bad for a rodent with a rifle. She didn't reply. Just watched the stars. Ramirez stirred behind her. So what now, boss? Mira thought about it. We rest, she said. Until they forget again. Think they will. Always. Reese yawned. Then we show them. Again. Mira let the silence linger before answering. Louder, if we have to. But no. Better when it's quiet. They drifted into the dark, trailing behind them the soundless echo of a war that never even shouted. And far behind them, across systems already rewriting rules and redrawing lines, every empire who'd once called humans charming rodents now updated their files. Species. Terran. Known combat specialties. Stealth, precision, psychological destabilization. Preferred weapon. Distance. Threat level. Under review. Reclassification pending. No flags raised. No anthem sung. Just silence. And a warning buried in that silence. Don't look for them. By the time you do, they've already seen you.